Cancel my mother-in-law's reservation. I need 5 rooms for my family. Karen's voice cut through the lobby like a knife. Eric, my receptionist, hesitated with the phone in his hand. His face lost all its color. "Let me call the owner," he said. And at that exact moment, I walked through the hotel's front door with my suitcase. Our eyes met. The panic in his eyes told me everything. I walked toward the counter, feeling the floor move beneath my feet. "Hello, Karen," I said loud enough for her to hear me over the speakerphone. "What's the problem?" The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear her sharp breathing on the other end of the line, then a click. She had hung up. Eric looked at me like he had just witnessed an accident. And maybe he had, because what was about to unfold was going to destroy what little was left of my family. I took the phone from Eric's trembling hands and dialed Karen's number. 123 rings. She answered but said nothing. I just heard her agitated breathing. "See you in 20 minutes, I said with a calm I didn't feel. "Here, at my hotel." I hung up before she could reply. My heart was beating so hard I thought everyone in the lobby could hear it. I looked at Eric and gave him a simple instruction. "Prepare the conference room and coffee. Lots of coffee." He nodded and disappeared toward the back of the building. I stood alone in the lobby, surrounded by the place I had built with my own hands. I felt like everything I had tried to protect was about to explode. 20 minutes. That was all the time I had to mentally prepare for the confrontation I had avoided for 5 years. I went up to my office on the 2nd floor, left my suitcase by the door, and sat down at the wooden desk that had belonged to my late husband. From the window I could see the parking lot. I knew Karen would show up. She had no choice. She was exposed, caught in her own trap. And something told me she wouldn't come alone. "My name is Beatrice. I'm 65 years old, and every wrinkle on my face tells a story of survival. This hotel, these ivory-colored walls, these gray marble floors, this garden overlooking the ocean. I built all of it, alone. After my husband died 8 years ago. After Robert married Karen 5 years ago. After my life became an endless series of family scenes where I was treated like a piece of old furniture that nobody knows where to put. Invisible, irrelevant, a burden. Karen never hid her contempt for me. From the first day I met her, when Robert brought her home with that nervous smile that warned me my son wasn't completely mine anymore, she measured my every word, my every gesture. She was evaluating if I was sophisticated enough for her social circle, my modest house in the suburbs, my simple clothes, my straightforward way of speaking. None of it fit the perfect image she had designed for her life. And I definitely didn't fit the image she wanted to project as Robert's wife. "Your mother is quaint," she once told Robert, thinking I couldn't hear her. We were in my kitchen. I was making dinner while they talked in the living room. "But when we have children, I think it would be better if they spent more time with my family. You know, so they have better influences." Robert said nothing. That silence hurt more than any direct insult. My son, the boy I had raised alone after his father's death, the young man I taught that dignity has no price. He stayed silent while his wife erased me from his future. After that night, something broke in me. It wasn't dramatic. There were no screams or slammed doors. It was quieter and more devastating. It was the decision to stop begging for love, to stop showing up in their lives hoping for scraps of attention. I took the savings I had sold the house where Robert grew up and took out loans I knew would take me years to pay off. I bought this abandoned piece of land facing the sea. Everyone thought I had lost my mind. "A woman your age starting a hotel business. Are you crazy, Beatrice?" they said. Maybe I was crazy, but it was my madness, my project, my escape. It took me 3 years to turn those ruins into a 12-room boutique hotel. I hired architects, designers. I worked side by side with construction workers and painters. I learned about permits, taxes, digital marketing, social media. I got up every morning at 5. I worked until the darkness forced me to stop, and I started all over again the next day. The physical pain was welcome. It distracted me from the other pain, the one that has no bandages or painkillers. The pain of knowing my son had chosen to please his wife over maintaining a relationship with me. Robert came to the grand opening, alone. Karen had a terrible migraine. He walked through the building in silence, touching the walls as if he couldn't believe I had accomplished this. "Mom, this is incredible," he finally said, and for a moment I saw my real son, not the watered-down version Karen had molded. "Why didn't you tell me you were doing something this big?" I held his gaze. "Because you stopped asking about my life a long time ago." He left that same night. He didn't visit me again for 3 years, until now, until this reservation he had made for both of them. My last desperate attempt. I had written him a simple email. "The hotel is turning 3. I'd like us to celebrate together. I've reserved the master suite for you, just one weekend. Robert, please." His reply came 2 days later. "I'll be there, Mom." 3 words that made me cry onto my keyboard. 3 words that gave me back my hope. 3 words that Karen had just tried to destroy with a single phone call. I looked at my watch. 12 minutes had passed. A silver car pulled into the parking lot, skidding slightly on the gravel. Karen got out abruptly, her dark hair perfectly styled, even in the middle of a crisis. She wore an emerald green dress that probably cost more than Eric's monthly salary. She slammed the car door so hard I heard the impact from my office. But she wasn't alone. Robert got out of the passenger seat. My heart stopped. My son was here. Pale, his shoulders slumped, walking 3 steps behind his wife like a scolded child. Karen stopped at the main entrance, smoothed her dress, lifted her chin, and walked in. Robert followed. Neither of them knew I was watching from above. Neither of them knew this confrontation wouldn't end the way they expected. I picked up my phone, took a deep breath, and dialed the reception extension. "Eric, send them up." I walked down the stairs with measured steps, each one calculated not to show the earthquake I felt inside. Karen was standing in the middle of the lobby, looking around as if she were evaluating the place for a ruthless review. Robert stayed near the door, hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed on the marble floor. When my shoes echoed on the last step, they both turned. Karen's expression went from shock to indignation in less than a second. "You," she said, as if the word itself was a complete accusation. I replied, stopping 10 feet away. "The owner of the hotel you just called to cancel my reservation." Karen's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. For the first time in 5 years, I saw her speechless. It was almost satisfying. Almost. Because when my eyes met Robert's, all that satisfaction evaporated. My son looked at me with a mix of confusion and something worse, shame. Not for his wife, for me. As if I was the one who had done something wrong by existing, by succeeding, by not conveniently disappearing from their lives. "Mom," he finally said. And that word sounded more like an apology than a greeting. We didn't know you were the owner." I laughed. It was a short, bitter laugh that surprised even me. "You didn't know Robert. I sent you the invitation from the hotel's official email. The name is on the website, on social media, on every single invoice. Beatrice Alvarado, owner and founder." At what point during these 3 years did you ever wonder what I was doing, where I lived, what I worked on, how I paid my bills? The silence that followed was so thick I could feel it pressing against my skin. Karen recovered her composure first. Of course she did. She had always been good at regrouping quickly, at turning any situation to her advantage. "Beatrice," she said, and the way she pronounced my name with that studied condescension made me clench my fists. "This is clearly a misunderstanding. I didn't know this was your hotel. If I had known, I obviously never would have—" "You never would have tried to cancel my reservation to give the rooms to your family," I interrupted. "That's the version we're going with." I took a step toward her, then another. Karen instinctively recoiled. "Tell me, Karen, what part exactly is the misunderstanding? The part where you called demanding they cancel your mother-in-law's reservation without even consulting her, or the part where you assumed you had the right to dispose of something that doesn't belong to you?" "My family is coming to visit," she said, lifting her chin, regaining ground. "They are 5 important people who need accommodation this weekend. I didn't know you had plans here. I thought Robert had booked this place for us and that you had invited yourself." The audacity of that statement took my breath away for a moment. I had invited myself, to my own hotel, to the reservation I had made myself. This woman's version of reality was Olympic level. "Karen, that's enough," Robert muttered. But his voice had no force. It was the whisper of someone who had stopped fighting a long time ago. She ignored him completely. "Look, Beatrice, I know things between us have been tense, but this is a perfect opportunity to start over. My family is anxious to see the place where Robert and I are spending the weekend. They are very important people. My mother, my uncles, people with connections. This could be excellent publicity for your little business." Little business. Those two words held all the poison she had been saving for years. This hotel had cost $250,000 between the land purchase construction and furnishings. I had hired an award-winning architect, renowned interior designers. I had imported furniture and decor. Online reviews gave us 5 stars. We had been mentioned in travel magazines. Little business. As if 3 years of my life, every cent of my savings, every sleepless night, could be reduced to those 2 condescending words. "This little business is worth more than the house you and Robert live in," I said calmly. "This little business generates more money in 1 month than Robert earns in 3. So no, Karen, I don't need publicity from your mother or your important uncles. What I needed was a weekend with my son, something that is apparently too much to ask." Robert finally moved. He walked toward me with those steps I remembered from his childhood when he had done something wrong and was coming to confess. "Mom, listen. Karen didn't mean it badly. Her family really is coming this weekend. They've been planning it for months. We can reschedule, right? We can come another weekend, whichever one you want." "They've been planning it for months," I repeated, feeling something inside me start to fracture. "Robert, I sent you the invitation 6 weeks ago. You confirmed 4 weeks ago. At what point during those 4 weeks did it occur to you to mention that the plans had changed? Or did you never intend to come? Was it just easier to confirm and then cancel at the last minute than to tell me the truth?" "It's not like that," he said, but the way he avoided my gaze said the opposite. "It's just, Karen told me about her family a few days ago, and I thought we could combine both things. Everyone together. A big family gathering with Karen's family at my hotel. During the weekend, I had planned to reconnect with my son. The level of delusion was almost impressive. "And when were you planning to tell me that your wife had invited 5 more people to my reservation?" I asked. "When they arrived with their suitcases? Or were you going to let me find out when Karen called to cancel on me?" Which she just did. Karen let out a dramatic sigh. "My God, Beatrice, you're blowing this all out of proportion." "I was just trying to modify a reservation. Is all this theater really necessary?" Theater. Another word carefully chosen to minimize what she had done. I turned to her, completely forgetting Robert for a moment. "No, Karen. You didn't try to make a modification. You called demanding they cancel my reservation without my knowledge or consent. That's not a modification. That's attempted theft. And if Eric hadn't been smart enough to hesitate, if I hadn't arrived at exactly that moment, what would have happened? Would you have shown up with your family and just kicked me out? Would you have left me on the street while you enjoyed the rooms I paid for?" "Nobody was going to leave you on the street," Karen said, but her voice had lost its strength. "I just thought that since it's your hotel, you could easily get another room, or stay at your house, or wherever you live now." Wherever you live now. As if for the last 3 years I had been wandering aimlessly. As if this hotel wasn't also my home. "I live here," I wanted to scream at her, "in the 4th floor room that no one can book because it's mine." But I didn't give her that information. She didn't deserve to know anything else about my life. "This weekend is important to me," I said, and I hated how my voice cracked slightly on the last word. "It's not just a reservation. It's the anniversary of this place. It's my way of celebrating that I survived, that I built something beautiful after losing everything. And I wanted to share it with my son. Only with him. No interruptions, no audiences, without having to pretend we're a happy family in front of strangers." I looked at Robert directly. "But it seems that's too much to ask." Robert opened his mouth to reply, but Karen cut him off, placing a hand on his arm. That gesture, that damn gesture I had seen 1,000 times. The way she touched him when she wanted to silence him, control him, remind him who was really in charge. And the worst part was, it worked. My son closed his mouth like an obedient child. "Beatrice, I think you're being incredibly selfish," Karen said, and the word hit me like a slap. "My family has been planning this trip. They've paid for plane tickets. They've taken time off work. Are you really going to ruin all of that for your whim of having a weekend alone with Robert? He lives here in this city. You can see him whenever you want." I laughed. It was a dry, hollow laugh that echoed strangely in the empty lobby. "Whenever I want. Karen, the last time I saw my son was 11 months ago. 11. On his birthday. For 20 minutes in a restaurant where you wouldn't stop checking your phone and he wouldn't stop apologizing for having to leave early because you had commitments. Before that, 8 months, Christmas, 30 minutes at your house where I was sat in the living room like I was an annoying salesperson. So don't tell me I can see him whenever I want. Because it's a lie, and we both know it." Karen's face hardened. Something in my words had struck a nerve. "Good. Let it hurt. If you don't see Robert more often, it's because you decided to walk away. You sold your house. You moved far away to start this project. You were the one who chose the hotel over the family." Every accusation was a poisoned arrow designed to make me feel guilty. And for a second, it almost worked. Almost. Until I remembered all the times I had tried to reach out, all the rejected invitations, all the unreturned calls, all the "we're just so busy, Mom" lines that Robert repeated like a learned mantra. "I didn't choose this hotel over my family," I said, feeling the rage I had held back for years begin to boil. "I built this hotel because I didn't have a family anymore. Because my son decided that keeping his wife happy was more important than having a relationship with his mother. Because every time I tried to visit you, found a reason for the visit to be short, uncomfortable, or canceled outright. Because I got tired of begging for my own son's scraps of attention." "That's not fair," Robert exclaimed, finally finding his voice. "I never asked you to stay away. I never said I didn't want to see you." I turned on him so forcefully that he took a step back. "No, Robert, you never said it. That's exactly the problem. You never said anything. When Karen commented that my clothes were outdated, you said nothing. When she made it clear I wasn't welcome at her dinners with friends, you said nothing. When her family treated me like I was the hired help at gatherings, you said nothing. Your silence said it all." I saw the guilt flash across his face. Good. Let him feel it. Let him carry the weight of all those moments where he chose comfort over courage. "Mom, I didn't know you felt that way," he said. But even those words sounded rehearsed, as if he'd said them 1,000 times in similar conversations. "If you had just told me..." I moved closer to him. We were inches apart. I could see the small wrinkles around his eyes, the premature gray hairs starting to appear at his temples. My boy, my son, the man he had become, one I no longer fully recognized. "I did tell you, Robert," I whispered. "Not with words, because you never gave me the chance to have a real conversation with you. But I told you in every way possible, every time I called and you cut the conversation short after 5 minutes. Every time I asked about your life and you answered in monosyllables. Every time I invited you to something and you said yes but then canceled. All of that was me telling you that I was losing you, and you chose not to listen." Karen physically stepped between us. "Enough! This is ridiculous. Robert, we're leaving. Clearly your mother is more interested in making you feel guilty than in resolving this like adults." She tried to take my son's hand, but something happened, something I had never seen before. Robert pulled away. It was a small, almost imperceptible movement, but we both noticed it. Karen's eyes widened with surprise. And something else. Fear. Because maybe for the first time, my son wasn't automatically following her script. "Give me a minute, Karen," Robert said, his voice tired. "Just a minute alone with my mother." She looked at him as if he had slapped her. "Excuse me." Her tone was a warning, the voice she used when he was about to cross an invisible line. "Karen, please. Just a minute." I waited for her to refuse. I waited for my son to give in as he always did. But this time, Robert held her gaze, and after what felt like an eternity, Karen turned and walked toward the entrance, her heels striking the marble with restrained fury. She stopped at the door without turning around. "5 minutes," she said. "I'll be in the car." The door closed behind her, the sound echoing through the building. We were left alone, mother and son, with 3 years of silence between us. Robert ran his hands over his face, a gesture I recognized from his father, something he did when he was overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say, Mom," he finally admitted. "Everything you said, it's true. And I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. Apologies were easy. Apologies cost nothing. What I needed were answers." "Why, Robert? Why did you let it happen? Your father died 8 years ago. I was all you had left, and you abandoned me for a woman who clearly can't stand me." "I didn't abandon you," he protested weakly. Karen is my wife. I have to choose her. That's how marriage works." I sat down in one of the lobby armchairs because my legs couldn't hold me anymore. "Choose her over me." "Your father never made me choose between him and your grandmother. Healthy marriages don't demand you cut ties with your original family, but you allowed it. Every time she criticized something about me, you stayed quiet. Every time she canceled a visit, you just accepted it. Do you know what that told me? That I wasn't worth fighting for?" Robert sank into the chair opposite me. There was so much pain in his face, it almost made me take it all back. Almost. "Karen can be difficult," he said finally. "When things aren't the way she wants, she becomes impossible. She makes scenes, she cries, she threatens to leave, she stops talking to me for days. It's just easier to please her than to confront her." Each word was a confession, and also an excuse. "So you sacrificed me to keep the peace in your marriage," I said slowly. "I became the collateral damage of your decision to avoid conflict." "I don't see it like that," he replied, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. "I just tried to keep a balance, to make you both happy." I leaned forward. "Robert, look at me." He finally did. His eyes were wet. "You can't make two people happy when one of them demands that the other doesn't exist. That's not a search for balance. That's a surrender. And you chose to surrender to her instead of defending what you and I had." The silence stretched between us. I could hear the wall clock ticking off the seconds. I could see the car through the windows where Karen was waiting, probably counting every second of these 5 minutes. "When was the last time you were truly happy with her?" I asked suddenly. The question caught him off guard. "What? Your marriage to Karen. When was the last time you felt genuinely happy, not comfortable, not resigned? Happy?" Robert was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then almost in a whisper he said, "I don't remember, Mom." "And that terrifies me." Those words hung in the air like a dead weight. My son had just admitted he couldn't remember the last time he was happy with his wife, and the way he said it with that small, defeated voice broke my heart in ways no insult from Karen ever could. "Robert," I began, but he raised a hand to stop me. "No, Mom, don't look at me like that. Not with pity. I get enough of that every time I look in the mirror." He stood up and walked to the windows overlooking the garden. The ocean looked calm from here, the waves small and steady. What irony. A calm sea while our lives were falling apart. "The first few months were good," he said, talking more to himself than to me. "Karen was charming, funny, passionate. She made me feel important, like I was the only person in the world who mattered. But after the wedding, something changed. Or maybe nothing changed. Maybe I just started to see what was always there." He turned to me. "It started with small things. She'd criticize my clothes, say my friends were boring, suggest I shouldn't have lunch with my work colleagues so often because I was wasting time instead of advancing my career. Each suggestion sounded reasonable on its own. But together they turned me into someone I don't even recognize. I wanted to run to him, to hug him like when he was a little boy and had nightmares. But I stayed seated. I needed to hear this. I needed him to say out loud what he had been burying for years. And Mom, I was the biggest idiot of all, because when she started on you, when she started making comments about your way of speaking, your house, your job, I didn't defend you. I thought I was being neutral. I thought if I didn't take sides, you two would eventually find a way to get along. His laugh was bitter, as if neutrality in the face of abuse is a virtue instead of cowardice. Why do you stay? The question slipped out before I could stop it. If you're so unhappy, or if you know she's changing you, why are you still there? Robert rubbed his eyes with a closed fist, because being 32 and failing at my first marriage would be devastating. Because our lives are completely intertwined, joint bank account, house in both our names, all our friends are couples she picked, because every time I think about leaving, she somehow senses it, and she becomes the woman I fell in love with, for exactly long enough to make me doubt myself, because I'm tired, Mom, just so tired. The front door flew open violently. Karen stormed in like a hurricane in an emerald dress. "Time's up," she announced. "Robert, we're leaving. Now." But my son didn't move. For the first time in probably years, he stood exactly where he was. "We're still talking, Karen." The temperature in the lobby seemed to drop 10 degrees. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Her tone was dangerously low. I recognized that voice. It was the voice that came before the scenes Robert had mentioned. The tears, the threats, the silent punishment. "I said we're still talking," Robert repeated. And though his voice trembled, he didn't back down. "My mother and I have a lot to talk about. Things that should have been said years ago." Karen looked at me as if I was poison. "Of course, it's already started. The classic maternal manipulation. Make you feel guilty, paint me as the villain, convince you your marriage is a prison." I wonder how long it took her to cry. The coldness with which she dissected the situation was chilling, as if it was all a predictable game where she already knew all the moves. "Nobody cried," I said, standing up. "We just had an honest conversation, something that apparently doesn't happen much in your marriage." Karen laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Honest. What an interesting word coming from you, Beatrice. Did you tell Robert the honest part where you sold his childhood home without even consulting him? Where you made unilateral decisions about your life and then blamed him for not being present?" She hit a nerve, she knew it, and I knew she knew it because she smiled with satisfaction. "That house was mine," I replied. "My husband left it to me, not to Robert. I had every right to sell it." Karen took a step toward me. "Technically, yes. Legally, yes. But emotionally, Beatrice, that house held all his childhood memories. The room he grew up in, the backyard where his father taught him to ride a bike. And you sold it to finance your vanity, this hotel, your grand project, your way of showing the world you weren't just another widow." Every word was a calculated stab, but there was truth in them. A twisted, poisoned truth, but truth nonetheless. "I sold that house because every room reminded me of what I had lost," I said, feeling my voice break. "My husband died in that house, in our bedroom. I found him there one morning. Do you have any idea what it's like to wake up every day in the place where the person you loved most took his last breath? That house stopped being a home and became a tomb. I had to get out of there, or I was going to drown in memories." Robert's face crumbled. "Mom, I didn't know. You never told me that." Of course I hadn't told him, because he was so consumed by his new life with Karen that he never asked why I really needed to sell. He never asked how I was processing my grief. He just assumed it was a cold financial decision. "There's a lot you don't know, Robert," I said softly, "because you stopped asking a long time ago." Karen was unmoved by the emotional moment. Beautiful story, very touching. But it doesn't change the fact that we're here to solve a practical problem. My family arrives in 2 days. I need 5 rooms. This hotel has 12. Mathematically, it should be simple. The audacity was staggering. After everything that had just happened, she still thought she was going to get what she wanted. "The answer is no," I said firmly. "This hotel is fully booked this weekend. I do not have 5 rooms available for your family." "You're lying," Karen said immediately. "I just checked your website in the car. You have at least 7 rooms available for this weekend." I crossed my arms. "I had. 10 minutes ago, I asked Eric to mark those rooms as unavailable. We are now officially full." I saw the exact moment Karen understood she had lost. Her face went from disbelief to fury in a second. "You can't do that. It's an abuse of power. It's petty revenge." "It's my hotel," I replied simply. "I can do whatever I want with my rooms, and I decided that this weekend, as originally planned, will be just for me and my son, if he still wants to stay, of course." All eyes turned to Robert. The poor man was pale, trapped between 2 opposing forces. I could see the internal war on his face, the part of him that wanted to stay, that wanted to reclaim what we had lost, and the part that had been conditioned for years to never, ever contradict his wife. "Robert," Karen said, and her voice had changed completely. It was no longer authoritarian. It was soft, vulnerable, with a hint of tears. "My family already bought their plane tickets. They already canceled their other plans. If I tell them now that we have nowhere to stay, it's going to be humiliating. My mother is going to think I can't even organize a simple family weekend. Please, we can find another hotel nearby for your mother. One just as nice. We'll pay. Wouldn't that be better? Everyone happy." She was brilliant, I had to admit. The way she pivoted from aggression to pleading, the way she made it about her family, her humiliation, her needs, never about what Robert needed or wanted. "I'm not going to another hotel," I said before my son could answer. "This is my hotel. This was my reservation, and I am not going to be displaced from my own space to accommodate your family, who, by the way, has never shown the slightest interest in meeting me in 5 years of marriage." "Because you never made the effort to get to know them," Karen shot back. "Always with your martyr attitude, always playing the victim." Something in me snapped. Maybe it was the accumulation of years of small insults. Maybe it was seeing my son so broken. Maybe I just didn't have anything left to lose. "You know what, Karen? You're right. I didn't make an effort to get to know your family. Want to know why? Because the first and only time I met them, your mother asked me if I was Robert's maid." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the sound of the ocean seemed to stop. Robert was staring at me wide-eyed. "At your engagement party, Karen. Remember that elegant dinner at that expensive restaurant your family chose? I arrived in the nicest dress I owned, a coral-colored dress I had bought just for the occasion. Your mother saw me, and without even introducing herself, said to me, 'Excuse me, can you get me more water?' When I explained that I was the groom's mother, do you know what she did? She laughed. She laughed and said, 'Oh my goodness, how embarrassing. It's just that your clothes are so simple.'" Karen had gone pale. "It didn't happen like that," she muttered, but her voice had no conviction. "It happened exactly like that." I continued feeling years of pent-up humiliation rise to the surface. "And your Uncle Ismail, the one you said has so many important connections, he spent the whole night asking me if I had finished high school. When I told him I had a university degree in business, he laughed and said, 'Well, community colleges give degrees to anyone now.' Your cousin Daniela asked me if my dress was from a thrift store, and you, Karen, you were there all night. Hearing every comment, seeing every look of disdain, and you didn't say a single word in my defense." "Robert didn't say anything either," she replied defensively, but it was a weak argument and she knew it. "You're right, Robert didn't say anything either. And that night in the car on the way home, I asked him why he let them treat me like that. Do you know what he told me? That your family was just like that, very direct, and that I shouldn't take it personally. That they were used to a certain social level, and that I had to understand they came from a different world." I turned to my son. "That was the night I started to lose hope that you would ever stand up for me." Robert had tears in his eyes. "Mom, I was an idiot. I know. But I was so desperate to fit into their world, to be good enough for Karen, that I let them treat the only person who had always been there for me like dirt." Karen made a sound of frustration. "Please, this is so dramatic. My family has high standards. Yes. Is it a crime to want the best for my husband? To want him to associate with successful, ambitious people who can open doors for him?" "What your family has isn't high standards," I said, my voice sharp. "What they have is classism, elitism, and cruelty disguised as honesty. And you, Karen, learned very well from them. Every comment about my clothes, my way of speaking, my job before this hotel, it was all your way of reminding me that I wasn't good enough to belong in your circle." I took a step toward her. "But here's the thing. I never wanted to belong to your circle. I just wanted a relationship with my son. That was all. And you two made that impossible." Karen held my gaze. For the first time, I saw something behind the perfect facade. Something like fear. "I don't know what you're talking about. I never stopped you from seeing Robert." I laughed without humor. "No, you just made every visit uncomfortable. You just scheduled important events on the days I had planned to see him. You just got in a bad mood for days every time he mentioned visiting me. You just made him feel guilty for wanting to spend time with me. That's not stopping him technically, Karen. That's manipulation. And you did it so well that Robert didn't even realize it for years." "That's what she does, Mom," Robert said suddenly. His voice was different now, firmer. "With everything, with everyone. My best friend from college, Elijah. He stopped calling me because every time he did, Karen found a reason to fight with me. She said Elijah was a bad influence, that he made me waste time, that a married man shouldn't be hanging out with single guys. The same thing happened with my friends from the gym, with my poker group, with practically everyone in my life who wasn't approved by her first." Karen took a step back as if she'd been hit. "That's not fair, Robert. I was just trying to protect you from people who weren't good for you. Elijah was a partier who made you come home late. That poker group was gambling money we didn't have. I was just looking out for our future." The way she said it sounded so reasonable, so logical. That was how manipulation worked, I realized. It wasn't obvious. It wasn't rude. It was careful, gradual, always wrapped in concern and love. "And the job?" Robert asked. And there was something new in his voice. Rage. "When I was offered that promotion 2 years ago, the one that required traveling twice a month, were you also looking out for our future when you cried for 3 days, saying I was choosing my career over our marriage? When you made me feel so guilty that I turned down the promotion? This was new to me. I knew nothing about a rejected promotion. From the look on Karen's face, this was dangerous territory. That promotion meant you'd be out of the house half the month." Karen said, her voice rising an octave. "It meant I would be alone managing everything while you traveled. What kind of marriage is that?" Robert ran his hands through his hair. "A marriage where both people support each other's careers. A marriage where you don't have to sacrifice every opportunity for growth because your partner can't stand to be alone for a few days." He looked at me. "That promotion would have meant $30,000 more a year, Mom. $30,000. Money we desperately needed because Karen had spent our savings on renovating the house." "The house needed updating," Karen shouted, and finally the mask of control had completely fallen. "I couldn't keep living in that outdated place with that horrible furniture you bought before you met me. What were our guests supposed to think?" There it was, the naked truth, the guests, the appearances, what other people thought. Everything in Karen's life revolved around how it looked from the outside, no matter how it felt on the inside. "You spent $45,000 on renovations," Robert said in a monotone voice. $45,000 that I had saved for 6 years for a down payment on a bigger house. You spent it without consulting me, and when I confronted you, you cried and said you just wanted to make our home beautiful for me, that you didn't know that money was important, that I never tell you anything. So, how were you supposed to know?" He laughed bitterly. "And I believed you. Or I forced myself to believe you, because the alternative was admitting that you had lied to me, manipulated me, and stolen from me." Every revelation was like peeling back layers of a rotten onion, and the more it was peeled, the worse it smelled. Karen was visibly trembling now. "I can't believe you're saying all this in front of her," she spat, pointing at me. "In front of someone who clearly wants to destroy our marriage. This is exactly what she wanted, to turn you against me." I walked toward her slowly. "Karen, listen to me carefully. I don't need to destroy your marriage. You already did that. I'm just a witness to the rubble." "You don't know anything about my marriage," she said, but her voice had lost its force. "I know my son hasn't been happy in years. I know you've isolated him from everyone who loves him. I know you've turned every decision into a battle where he has to choose between what he wants and keeping you happy. I know you've spent money you didn't have on appearances you didn't need. And I know that right now you are more worried about saving face with your family than about the emotional well-being of your husband." Each point was a blow, and I could see it was landing. "You don't understand," Karen said, and for the first time I heard something different in her voice. It wasn't arrogance, it was desperation. "My family, they expect certain things from me. It's always been like this. I have to be perfect. My house has to be perfect. My husband has to be perfect. If I fail, if I show any cracks, they—" She stopped, as if she had revealed too much. But it was too late. The door was open. "They what, Karen?" I asked gently. "Do they criticize you? Do they make you feel like you're not good enough? Do they treat you the same way they treated your mother-in-law?" Her eyes filled with tears. Real tears this time, not the strategic ones she used to manipulate situations. "You don't understand. My mother, she's never satisfied. Nothing I do is ever good enough. My sister Evelyn is the perfect one, the one who married the doctor, the one with the huge house, the one who throws parties where important people go. I'm just the disappointment, the one who married a mid-level manager instead of an executive, the one who can't even organize a family weekend without ruining it." And there it was, the vulnerability that had been hidden under layers of cruelty. Karen wasn't just the villain of this story. She was a victim too, a victim who had chosen to perpetuate the cycle instead of breaking it. "So you decided to do to Robert what your family does to you," I said slowly. "Project all that pressure, that need for perfection, that constant dissatisfaction. Turn him into your project, to prove to your mother that you can have the perfect life." Karen wiped her tears angrily, as if she was mad at herself for showing weakness. "It's not that simple." "Of course it is," Robert intervened. "It all makes sense now. The excessive renovations, the insistence that I change the way I dress the dinners with important people where you showed me off like a trophy. It wasn't about me. It was about what I represented to your family. It was about proving to your mother that you could have an enviable life too." He sat down heavily in the armchair. "God, we were just two broken people trying to fill voids that the other could never fill." The lobby was plunged into a heavy silence. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, staining everything in shades of orange and pink, beautiful and sad at the same time. "My mother arrives tomorrow," Karen said finally, her voice barely a whisper. "Melissa, her and the rest of the family. I told them we had a beautiful hotel reserved, that we were going to have the perfect weekend. If they arrive and I have nothing, if I have to admit I failed even at this—" Her voice broke. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I looked at this woman who had made my life miserable for 5 years, this woman who had pushed my son away from me, and all I could feel was a deep sadness, because I recognized something in her. I recognized the weight of impossible expectations. I recognized the desperate need to prove her worth. I had felt something similar after my husband died. The need to prove I was still relevant, useful, valuable. The difference was, I had built something new instead of destroying what I had. "Have you ever told your mother how you feel?" I asked. Karen looked at me surprised by the question. "Tell her what? That her impossible standards are killing me. That no matter what I do, I'll never be Evelyn. She'd just say, I'm being dramatic. That I should be grateful to have a family that cares about me." The way she said it with that bitter resignation reminded me of how Robert had spoken about his own situation. The cycles repeated. The wounds were passed down. "When your mother arrives tomorrow," I said slowly, measuring each word. "What do you think is going to happen?" Karen laughed without humor. "She's going to evaluate everything. The hotel, the rooms, the food, the service. She's going to compare it to the resort Evelyn stayed at last month. She's going to find something to criticize. She always does. And then for the next 6 months at every family gathering, she'll casually mention how her weekend was disappointing, how she expected more." The description was so specific, so painful, that even Robert winced. "And you're going to spend the whole weekend trying to manage her mood," I added. "Apologizing for things that aren't your fault, trying to make every moment perfect so that maybe, just maybe, she'll give you a crumb of approval. Am I wrong?" Karen shook her head, fresh tears running down her cheeks. "It's exhausting. It's always been exhausting, but she's my mother. It's my family. I can't just cut ties like—" She stopped, but we both knew how that sentence ended. "Like you did with Robert." Except I hadn't cut ties. I had been cut off. "There's a difference between setting healthy boundaries and cutting ties," I said. "I never wanted to lose my son. But it got to a point where staying close meant losing my dignity, my mental health, my sense of self-worth. So I stepped away to survive, to build something that was mine, where no one could make me feel small." I looked around the lobby. "This hotel is my sanctuary, the place where I got my power back. And yes, part of that meant putting physical distance between me and my pain." Robert stood up and walked over to Karen. He stood in front of her, studying her face, as if seeing her for the first time. "Karen, we need to talk. A real conversation. No manipulations, no strategic tears, no threats. About what we really want. About whether this," he gestured between them, "is still working, or if we're just clinging to the idea of what we think a marriage should be." She looked at him with terrified eyes. "Are you saying you want a divorce?" "I'm saying I want honesty," he replied, "from both of us, because this version, where I walk on eggshells and you manage everything through guilt and control, this isn't a marriage. It's a prison for both of us." The words floated between them, heavy and final. Karen opened her mouth several times but said nothing. Finally, in a very low voice, she said, "I don't know how to be different. This is who I am. This is how I was raised." Robert nodded slowly. "I know, and that's exactly the question. Can you change? Do you want to change? Because I can't keep living like this." The sun had set completely now. Eric had discreetly turned on the lobby lights, creating a warm atmosphere that contrasted with the cold tension in the air. "I need to think," Karen said finally. "This is all too much, too fast." She turned to me. "Beatrice, I know I have no right to ask you for anything, not after everything. But my family really is arriving tomorrow, and I really have nowhere to put them. Is there any way—" She left the question unfinished, hanging in the air like a plea. I looked at this woman who had been my antagonist for 5 years, broken, vulnerable, exposed. Part of me wanted to say no, to tell her to figure it out herself, to feel the consequences of her actions. But another part, the part that had suffered under the weight of impossible expectations, the part that knew what it felt like to be not enough, that part felt compassion. "There's a hotel about 20 minutes from here," I said finally. "The Coastal View Hotel. It's owned by a friend of mine, Ron. I can call him and ask him to book you 5 rooms. It won't be at the price you expected, but it will be acceptable." Karen stared at me, disbelieving. Why would you do that for me?" "I'm not doing it for you," I answered honestly. "I'm doing it because breaking cycles of pain is important, and because maybe, just maybe, if your weekend isn't a complete disaster, you'll have the mental space to do the real work you need to do, on yourself and on your marriage." Karen was frozen, as if she couldn't process that I was offering her a way out after everything. I don't know what to say." Her voice trembled. "A thank you would be fine," I said without emotion. "Thank you," she whispered, and for the first time it sounded genuine. No layers of sarcasm or condescension, just pure, confused gratitude. I took out my phone and dialed Ron's number. He answered on the third ring with his usual cheerful voice. "Beatrice, what a surprise. How are you?" I explained the situation in general terms without going into sordid details. Ron, being the professional he was, didn't ask uncomfortable questions. "Of course I have availability. 5 rooms for tomorrow for 3 nights. I'll give them a special price since they're a referral from you." When I hung up, I passed the information to Karen. "Rooms confirmed. You can check in tomorrow after 3 p.m. The price is $120 per night per room." I watched her do the math mentally. 5 rooms, 3 nights. $1,800 total. Not cheap, but not impossible. "Okay," she said finally. "We'll take it." "Thank you, Beatrice. Really." Robert looked at her with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Relief mixed with sadness. "So, your family will stay at the Coastal View, and we—" He left the question in the air. "You two will decide what to do," I said firmly. "Robert, my original offer still stands. The master suite is reserved for you if you decide to stay. We can have that weekend we planned, just the 2 of us, no interruptions. Or you can go with Karen and her family. It's your choice. But it has to be your choice, not someone else's." I looked at Karen directly. "And that means you can't pressure him, manipulate him, or make him feel guilty, no matter what he decides." "Understood." Karen swallowed hard and nodded. "Understood." The moment stretched awkwardly. I could see the internal struggle on Robert's face. His entire adult life had been about choosing the path of least resistance, about pleasing Karen to avoid conflict. And now he was being asked to make a real decision with real consequences. "I need time," he said finally, "to think, to process all this." He turned to Karen. "Go to the car. I'll wait a few more minutes here with my mother, and then we'll go home. But tonight, we're sleeping in separate rooms. We need space." Karen's expression was pure panic. Separate rooms was the first step toward the end, and they both knew it. "Robert, that's not necessary," she began, but he held up a hand. "Yes, it is. Please, Karen, go to the car." This time, there were no additional pleas. No tears. Karen nodded, grabbed her purse, and walked to the exit. Before she walked through the door, she turned around one last time. "Beatrice, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for a lot of things. I don't know if it matters now, but it's true." And then she was gone, leaving Robert and me alone. My son sank into the armchair as if all the strings holding him upright had been cut simultaneously. "I feel like my life just exploded," he said, staring at the ceiling. "And the terrifying part is, I feel relieved. What kind of person feels relieved when their marriage is falling apart?" I sat down beside him and took his hand. It was bigger than mine now, rough from office work and years, but I could still see the boy he had been. "An honest person," I answered. "A person who has been suffering in silence for too long." "How did I get here, Mom?" His voice broke. "How did I let it get this bad? Dad never would have let this happen. He knew how to set boundaries. He knew when to fight and when to give in. I just wanted to keep the peace, and in the process I lost everything else." I squeezed his hand. "Your father made mistakes too, Robert. He wasn't perfect, but he learned. And you can learn too. It's not too late to get yourself back." Robert looked at me with watery eyes. "What if I don't know who I am anymore? What if Karen is right and without her I'm just nothing?" "Listen to me very carefully," I said, turning to face him. "You are my son. You are smart, kind, and capable. You have a job you like, skills that others value, a heart that deserves to be taken care of. Karen did not make you. She molded you, yes. She changed you, bent, you broke you in some places. But she didn't create you. You existed before her, and you will exist after her. And maybe, just maybe, the version of you that exists after will be stronger, more authentic, and happier." He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. "Will there be anything left of my marriage after this weekend?" The question was genuine, not rhetorical. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe. Maybe you and Karen can go to therapy, do the hard work, rebuild on a more honest foundation. Or maybe you'll realize this marriage was built on unmet needs and toxic expectations, and the kindest thing you can do is let each other go. Either outcome is okay, Robert. What's not okay is continuing as you have been." We sat in silence for a long time. Eric walked by discreetly offering coffee, which we gratefully accepted. The hot, bitter liquid was exactly what I needed. "Can I ask you something, Mom?" His words careful. "When you built this hotel, when you made the decision to sell the house and start over, were you scared?" I smiled sadly. "I was terrified. Every day, every decision, every loan I signed. It felt like jumping off a cliff without knowing if there was water below." "And what made you keep going?" he asked. "The alternative," I said simply. "The alternative was staying where I was, in a house full of ghosts, in a life that didn't exist anymore, waiting for you or someone else to rescue me. And I realized no one was coming. If I wanted a different life, I had to build it myself. So I did, brick by brick, mistake by mistake, until one day I looked around and saw I had created something beautiful." I looked around the lobby, the plants, the paintings, the carefully chosen furniture. "This place saved me, Robert. It gave me purpose when I thought I had none left." Robert nodded slowly. I think I need to find what's going to save me." He stood up and helped me to my feet. "Thank you, Mom, for today, for not giving up on me even when I had given up on us." He hugged me then, a long, tight hug, the kind we hadn't shared since he was a teenager. He smelled different now, expensive cologne that Karen had probably chosen, but underneath it I could still detect something familiar. My son, my baby, my hope. "I love you, Mom," he whispered into my hair. "I'm so sorry I've been absent. I'm sorry I didn't protect what we had." The tears I had been holding back finally started to fall. "I love you too, my darling. Always. No matter what." We slowly separated, both of us, wiping away tears with shaky smiles. "I should go," Robert said, looking toward the door where he knew Karen was waiting. "She's in the car, and we have a lot to talk about tonight." "I know. Go. But Robert, promise me something." He looked at me expectant. "Promise me that no matter what you decide to do, it will be because you chose it. Not out of fear, not out of guilt, not because of what others expect from you, but because it's what you truly want in your heart." He swallowed hard. "I promise, Mom." I watched him walk to the exit. Just before he crossed the threshold, he stopped and turned. "The weekend. I think I'd like to stay. Here. With you, if the offer is still open." My heart leaped. It will always be open. He smiled. It was a small, tired smile, but genuine. "I'll arrive Friday afternoon, after Karen's family is settled at the Coastal View. Is that okay?" "Perfect," I wanted to shout. "It's perfect." But I just nodded. "It's perfect. I'll have the suite ready for you." And then he left. I heard the car engine start. I saw the taillights disappear down the gravel path, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt real hope. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed in my room on the 4th floor, watching the ocean through the window. The waves were constant, endless, reminding me that life went on no matter what. I thought about everything that had happened in the last few hours: the confrontation, the revelations, the tears, Karen's vulnerability, which I never expected to see, and Robert, my son, finally finding his voice. At 3 in the morning, my phone vibrated. A text message from an unknown number. "Beatrice, it's Karen. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to tell you something. Robert is asleep in the guest room. I'm in our bed alone, thinking about everything we said today. You're right. About everything. I've been terrible to you. I've manipulated Robert. I've projected my own issues onto our marriage. I don't know if I can change, but I want to try. Not for my mother, not for appearances, but because I realize today that I'm about to lose the only man who has ever genuinely loved me, and that terrifies me more than my family's disapproval. I read the message 3 times. I didn't reply right away. I took my time choosing my words carefully. Finally, I wrote, "Karen recognizing the problem is the first step, but apologies without real change are just manipulation with a different name. If you truly want to save your marriage, get professional help. Individual therapy, couples therapy. Do the work, not for Robert, for you, because you deserve to be more than the sum of your mother's expectations." I pressed send and turned off the phone. Friday arrived faster than I expected. I spent the days obsessively preparing the master suite, fresh flowers, the softest linen sheets, a bottle of that wine Robert liked when he was younger. Small details he might not even notice, but that were important to me. At 5 in the afternoon, his car appeared in the parking lot. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would burst from my chest. I watched him get out with a small suitcase. He looked different, lighter somehow. When he entered the lobby, he smiled at me. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, my love." Eric handed him the suite key with a knowing smile. "Presidential suite, Mr. Robert. Enjoy your stay." Robert laughed. "Thanks, Eric." We rode up in the elevator together in a comfortable silence. When I opened the door to the suite, I saw his expression change. Surprise. Emotion. Appreciation. "Mom, this is amazing." The room was spacious with floor-to-ceiling windows looking directly at the ocean. The king-size bed was covered with that lavender comforter I had found at a craft market, a private balcony with 2 chairs and a small table, a bathroom with a deep soaking tub and a rain shower. I had put framed photos on the bedside table, photos of Robert as a child, of his father, of the 3 of us together. Robert walked over to the photos and touched them tenderly. "I haven't seen these in years." His voice was barely a whisper. "I kept them, all of them. I thought maybe one day you'd want to see them again." He turned to me, his eyes wet. "Thank you for not giving up on me, Mom, for keeping trying, even when I had stopped responding." I hugged him. "You're my son. I would never give up." We stayed like that for a long moment, silently healing years of distance. That night we had dinner on the hotel terrace. Eric had set up a special table for 2 away from the other guests. We ate, drank wine, and talked about everything and nothing. I told him about the challenges of running the hotel, the difficult personalities, the wonderful guests who had become friends. He told me about his job, his frustrations, his dreams that he had buried. "Did you ever want to be an architect?" I asked, remembering his passion as a teenager. "I used to. Now, I don't know. I feel like I've been living on autopilot for so long I don't even know what I'm passionate about anymore." "Then this weekend is for rediscovering," I said. "No pressure, no expectations, just you deciding what you want from life." Robert nodded thoughtfully. "Karen and I had a long talk on Wednesday, after I got home. It was brutal, painful, but necessary. I told her everything, how I felt, how her family made me feel, how her manipulations had worn me down. She cried a lot. She apologized. She promised to change." He paused. "I don't know if I believe her. Mom, she's promised to change before, after every big fight, and it lasts for a week, maybe 2, then it's back to the same thing." "And what did you tell her?" I asked. I told her this time was different, that we either get real professional help or I was leaving. Not as a threat, as a fact. "Because I can't live like this anymore." He took a sip of wine. "She agreed. She found a therapist. Our first couples session is on Tuesday, and she started individual therapy yesterday." I was surprised. I had expected resistance. "That's progress." Robert nodded. "Yes, but she also told me something that made me think. She said that if we were going to therapy, I needed to work on my things too, on my inability to set boundaries, on my need to please, on how my silence was just as destructive as her manipulation." She's right, I admitted. A marriage is two people's responsibility. She has her work to do. You have yours. Robert looked at me directly. Do you think we can save it? Our marriage? The question hung in the air between us. Honestly, I don't know. But I know that if you're going to try, it has to be for the right reasons. Not for fear of being alone, not for appearances, but because you genuinely believe there's something there worth saving. Real love. Mutual respect. A future you both want. He contemplated my words in silence. The ocean roared softly below. The stars were beginning to appear. Saturday dawned with a clear sky and the sound of seagulls. We ate breakfast together on the suite's balcony, freshly baked bread and strong coffee. Robert looked rested for the first time in years. I slept for 8 straight hours, he told me with amazement. I can't remember the last time that happened. I smiled. This place has that effect. The sound of the sea, the peace, the absence of tension. We spent the morning walking on the beach barefoot in the sand. We talked about Dad, about how much we missed him, about how he would have handled this situation. He would have told you to stand up for your mother, I said. He was always very clear about that, family first. I know, Robert replied, and I'm ashamed it took me so long to realize I betrayed him. Him, you, myself. We sat in the sand watching the waves. Your dad wasn't perfect, you know, I said after a while. He had a temper. He was stubborn sometimes. Sometimes he avoided conflicts he should have faced, but what he had and what he never lost was his moral compass. He knew the difference between keeping the peace and betraying his values. That's the difference. Robert scooped sand between his fingers, letting it fall slowly. How did he learn that? I laughed softly. By making mistakes, lots of them, and by